welcome everybody to Queer Teens TT. I am Seda Marie, and today we will be having a discussion with Ms. Ashlee Burnett. Now I will allow Ms. Ashlee to introduce herself to you all.
Hi everyone. I'm Ashlee Burnett, and I use she/her pronouns. I am from right here in Trinidad and Tobago, and I do work in advancing gender justice, and I'm the founder of Feminine Caribbean, which is an intersectional Caribbean feminist NGO. And so, I mean, my background is in the arts, and I've been able to marry activism and arts over the past years since 2014. I'm 23, so I'm young, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
And we are so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we have some spoken word poets here, so I'm gonna share that Ms. Ashlee is actually a spoken word poet. So that's okay. So I think now we can get into the questions. If nobody has any questions for Ms. Ashlee about her work or anything. So nobody? Okay, just making sure. Okay. Okay, so I think we can go into the questions. So now I will ask, there was a list of questions that we compiled based on the questions that y'all sent in. So this is how this is going to go. I will ask Ms. Ashlee the question and she can answer based on her experience, more or less. So let us go into that part of today's events. Okay, so the first question is, okay, just making sure somebody didn't want to see something. What has been the most challenging part of being a queer person in Trinidad and Tobago for you?
So honestly, I'm really happy that you had asked this question because it made me sit and really think about it, and what my experience has been, and recognizing that in many ways it has been sort of privileged. Because I mean, pre-COVID, I would have been able to exist with my partner in public and not be worried that someone would have like targeted us. In fact, like we would hang out in the avenue and there would be people who come up to us and be like, oh my God, it's so refreshing to see a lesbian couple, you know, being out in public and holding hands, right? And so it was very sobering for me because I think me as a person, I'm sort of fearless, and sometimes it's not a good thing in some ways because it kind of blurs my vision and being able to see things as they are. But as a queer person, you know, socially, it has not been bad. It has been awkward. It has been uncomfortable, but I've never been put in a position where I felt unsafe and that I could not exactly be myself being out in public. I mean, of course, there is, you know, looking at legislation and how knowing that if there were anything to happen to me, then I would not have been protected by the state. And also just navigating that and knowing what my friends, because I do have friends, right, who go through a lot of difficult things. And I think it was then when I realized, like, wow, actually, like, even though you're a part of this community, there is some degree of privilege that you experience. And so that has been my experience. And I guess the challenge is definitely just when it comes to legislation and, you know, really been taught.
So we're gonna move on to the next question, which is, how did your friends and family, or maybe just people that you had to share that you were queer, how did they respond when they were given that information?
Yeah. So I'll share about friends first and then family, but I just want to give a trigger warning that the family side of it is one that is a bit harsh to some degree. And so for folks who've had any sort of negative experience with their family, just giving you a heads up. So with my friends have always known, which is always funny because I did go through a phase where I dated and engaged only cis men. So that was interesting. And that was a way that I tried to, I guess, mask being queer. But my friends always knew, and they'd always like joke about it sometimes, and I'll just ignore them. And so I never really had to come out to my friends. It was just sort of like, okay, I had a partner. There was someone I was seeing, and I just told them casually, because like we created a safe space, and it was very easy for us to talk about it. So it was never a position where I had to come now like be nervous and tell them, because my friends are amazing people. With my family, really that was a lot. It didn't start off being a lot though. So I came out to my mom in May of 2019 on WhatsApp. I literally messaged her and told her that I was queer, and I used queer on purpose because I knew she would never understood what I was trying to say. Um, so it was a kind of like easing my way into it. But when I told her that I was queer, and she asked what it meant, and I was like, well, and I explained it. She was like, okay, well, I love you, and this changes nothing. And that thing parents say sometimes, that this doesn't change who you are, and they love you and all of that. And it was great. I felt, so good in that moment. But then it was, I think the day after I had launched my website, and in it, I have a standard line in my bio that says querying, and carrying the Caribbean forward. And that is the only line that never changes in any bio that I have. Because I see the importance of being openly queer, right? And when I sent on my website, and she saw it, she was like, you know, don't post this on Facebook, right? Because she calls the internet Facebook. Because you don't want everyone to know about it. And I got so mad. Like I just ended the conversation, and I was just really upset because what are you even saying? And so it was kind of awkward. She up to this day, she still refers to my partner as being my friend. Even my partner's mom calls me her friend, and it's just always so annoying. But earlier this year, back in February, I have three brothers, and one of them died. And my other brother, who hasn't spoken to me in a very long time, he was there, and that was really bad, right? It got really verbally abusive, as in him being abusive to me verbally, um, and it was very traumatic. Um, he literally like ran my partner and I from the house, and we had to go to the car barefooted. It was really a traumatic experience, and I still have nightmares about it ever so often. But it just goes to show how important chosen family is, because looking at that juxtaposition of having friends that are super supportive, and I've been able to curate my friendship, my friend groups like that. And I got to choose them, but you can't choose your family. You just kind of end up with them sometimes, but all the time, because you're born into that. But that has been very traumatic and not fine. And it's strange because I didn't come out to my brother. Of course, your family talk, they tell each other things, and they, make it out to be whatever. And so that has been a real, heartbreaking experience. Beautiful on the friendship side with my friends, but so ridiculous on the family side of it.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, okay, so I'm gonna take it in parts. First of all, sorry for your loss about your brother. Um, I'm also sorry that you had to go through such a traumatic experience with having that sort of negative response from the family. But as you said, you do have friends who are very supportive. And I think that that's very important for us as queer people because we need to have those safe spaces and we need to have that sort of community where we can it's sort of a dome kind of that protects us
Yeah.
from the malice of the world that hates us more or less.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ms. Zoe will not be able to join us today. Just sharing with y'all. So yes, we will continue. So the third question is, has there ever been an instance where you have felt unsafe in public? And what was that like?
Yeah. I have actually I've never, like, as in me as a person, like as an individual, felt unsafe in public. I mean, there was this time in Jamaica. Jamaica's quite a homophobic space, right? And I was there for a conference, and the conference was quite diverse, very inclusive, and there were trans women there, and they were dressed in their preferred gender expression, and we went to Emancipation Park, which is quite ironic, right? And there were security guards who were telling them and us to leave as a collective because it was against, their rules, and they called it cross-dressing, right? And so it was really scary because I'm not in my home country. I'm in Jamaica, and there were so many security guards that were flocking around, trying to get us all to leave. And what was amazing to see was those women standing up to those guards, and because they know their rights, they know that what they were talking about was nonsense, and they stood up to the guards. Of course, we did leave because it's not wise to stay in a space that's not welcoming you. And so that was one instance. And then for Pride celebrations pre-COVID, every year there's always like churches who come, like, to do their own to protest against Pride. And so they are always so aggressive in their slurs and the things that they say. And so in a case like that, that has made me feel uncomfortable, but I won't say that it has made me feel unsafe. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think that I'm sorry you had to go through that experience. So the fourth question is along the same lines, but it is if um have you ever experienced discrimination because of your identity?
Yes. And I found it so timely because if you had asked me this question on Friday, I would have said no. But yesterday, I got so before I started Feminine, I used to work with an NGO, and I was actively participating for years as a poet and teaching artist. So what I did was perform, of course, and write, but I got to use spoken word as a tool to teach about social issues like gender-based violence and violence extremism and stuff. And so people actually know me as doing that. So someone actually had reached out to me a while ago to conduct these sessions for a project. And I said yes, and everything was great. And on Friday, they asked me for my bio and my headshot, and I sent both. And then there was radio silence. Actually, it was on Thursday, and then they were silent. So I just thought that people were busy and they got their stuff and they're working with it. So I got this phone call yesterday, and this was shortly before I got the email with the questions, right? And the person called, they started off saying, I really appreciate you as a person. You're so brilliant, and I respect you, and I have so much love for you. And I'm sitting down there like, where is this going? Because that seemed like a build up for something bad, and I just couldn't even. I thought they were going to tell me that I wasn't sharing the artwork and that I need to show my support better. That wasn't even it, right? They said, we received your bio, and I didn't tell anybody about your sexuality, right? But your bio reveals it, and we don't know if people will feel comfortable, and I call me to have a conversation, but I don't know if you think, can you change your bio? And I sat down there and I was livid because no, the answer is no, I'm not changing my bio, and I'm not going to be in a space that doesn't want me to be who I am. And I sat there and I was really angry, right? And I had to explain to them, like, you can't want to teach people about gender-based violence and these social inequalities and then not take a human rights approach, because then you don't want me there, right? And I asked them, how did you think that you were gonna, how you thought I was gonna approach gender-based violence, like in a very heteronormative sense, or what were you expecting? Because you can't talk about gender-based violence and not talk about homophobia or transphobia, right? And so they were like, no, we could talk about those things. I was like, oh, it's just that you don't want the queer person to teach it, right? And I was mad. I told them no, never in a million years. And I asked them to send me the same concerns and suggestions via email, because paper trail is very important. And after I got off the call and everything kind of like sunk in, I realized, like, wow, this actually just happened to me. Because these things happen all the time. But what hurt the most was that I am very open about my sexuality. Like, I feel like everyone knows. And they also know how, I guess, unapologetic I am about it. And so I realized that I was doing that to make things quite clear to people that if you are planning to ever deal with Ashlee, you're dealing with queer Ashlee and bold Ashlee and all these types of Ashlees, because it's open, it's there. But I realize that being upfront and open does not protect you from discrimination. In fact, there are people who will come to utilize whatever talent or knowledge you have and ask you to change parts of yourself to become more palatable. And that was quite, I spoke to my mentor, I called her immediately, and she was like, what? She's like, that's like someone telling you, hey, Ashlee, can you take your camera off and not tell people you're Black? Because, being Black is an identity, being queer is also an identity, and you can't separate either. And of course, I did cry. I was mad at myself for crying, but crying is absolutely necessary, and it's okay. But it was something else, and it really reminded me that, we have a long way to go, and it doesn't matter what stage you reach in your life, you're still gonna experience people wanting to change you or wanting you to hide parts of yourself. And I had to, make a decision then, that am I going to do this because I'm getting paid for it and hide myself, or am I going to stay true to who I am and stay true to what I represent for myself and what I represent for other people, and say no. They sent me an email saying that I can keep my bio as is, but it was too late, and I said no. So yeah, that has been, I guess, the experience. Just like, I wanted to. There were times I wanted to be a nun, right? And I used to spend all of my lunch times in high school. I went to a convent, and there's a prayer room there, and I would go to mass whenever there was mass all the time. And I would spend all of my lunchtime in the prayer room. I would walk around with my Bible. And there were queer girls in school. But I was like, oh my God, no, that's wrong. And even we had religious knowledge classes, like you actually got end of term exams for RK, religious knowledge. And it was weird because, like, well, not weird, but funny. My friends who I went to high school with, they are always so shocked. Like, how is this the same Ashlee? Because I was super homophobic then. I thought that, the Bible said it's wrong, so it's wrong. And I would spend lunch times in the prayer room praying because I felt that I knew that I was queer, but I also felt as if this is not okay. And if I'm a Christian, then this can't exist. And I would spend lunch times praying about it. I did like the Life in the Spirit seminars to pray about it. And I would go to the mount and light candles and pray about it. And it was really, really gutting because I would then have to, I forced myself to engage in a very heterosexual way with, cis men. And that was never cool because each time I will feel like less of myself and just feel to just bathe in a hot shower, scorching hot. And dealing with that was very hard because I mean, you have the world telling you it's wrong. You have your social institutions telling you it's wrong, and it was very hard to navigate that. But after I left high school, and even up to my first year in university, I was wearing my crucifix in school, staying focused on Jesus and telling myself that I could not have been gay, right? And I can't even remember when the switch happened, right? But the switch just happened. I started to dress more like myself, feel more like myself, have my hair the way that I wanted it without at that time fearing that people would now associate how I looked with me being queer, and sort of accepting that. I also had like therapy. I had to, and I'm still in therapy, working through various things that would have affected me growing up and what made me have that internalized hate for myself. And so that has and still is a journey. I'm still unlearning and learning so much new stuff because even as I would say a socially conscious person and even being queer, there are still things that I struggle with about myself, about other people, and I still have to remind myself each time that this is a journey and I can't be mad at myself for the journey, but just ensure to always be open-minded and accepting and understanding. And it's not easy for someone to unlearn internalized homophobia or queerphobia, right? They have to first recognize that it's actually internalized and where it comes from inside, and then dedicate themselves to actually working on it. And it takes like real work. It's not something where you just recognize, oh my God, it's wrong. I'm gonna do some readings and it's gonna just pass. Like, no, it's literally painful, hard work that you go through. There's a lot of crying. There's a lot of anger towards your previous self for why were you so awful? Why didn't you get it? But it's a journey, and I think it's like a lifelong journey because you're constantly learning and understanding things better. And well, externally, that's also a journey because I always have to remind myself that I was not always a socially conscious person. I wasn't always this person that I am today. I was not a person that I am right now last week. Not a person last week was queerphobic or anything, but just showing how we grow as people all the time. And so that has been hard. I also have this mantra that I live by, which is centering love in everything. And whenever someone comes to me with some nonsense about not understanding, what it means to be queer or, the queer experience, I have to remind myself that, okay, my response has to be grounded in love, but also recognizing that there's some people who don't want to learn. And so it's very important that you recognize that not everybody cares, or no wants to learn and be better. Some people just are out here to be awful, and you just need to set them aside and stay focused and look away and avoid. Of course, there are people who actually want to learn and are just confused. Sometimes it's hard to decipher which is which, but I always try to approach things to educate persons. I wasn't always that way. I used to like tell people that they were dumb and just move on and be really mean about it. But now I'm trying to approach things with love and direct people to resources to teach them. However, and my last point on this question, I had gotten invited to this panel recently, well, a podcast, and someone asked me, they were like, they're having this controversial topic, which is talking about being gay. And they wanted me to be on it. And the person who was going to be the guest was someone who was homophobic. And they wanted us to present both sides to the argument. And I was like, what? No. I had to read a message over and over to get what they were asking me, because I couldn't believe that they were asking me what they were asking me. Because homosexuality, being queer is not up for debate. You can't tell me, you're trying to debate whether I should have rights or not, that I should be able to exist or not. Like, no way. And there's no way I'm going to subject myself to that type of violence. Like, just so I'm going to say, yeah, and sit down and talk to someone who's going to tell me that I have no right to exist and be who I am. And so whilst it may have been, I don't know, maybe, I don't even know, because I said no. Who knows, it could have been an educational moment, but I saw some clips and it wasn't. But yeah, some things you have to really sit down, think about it, and decide what you're gonna do. But yeah.
Wow. That the vast majority of that was extremely relatable to me. I also go to a convent. I'm Catholic. I also used to want to be a nun. I walk around with my crucifix all the time. I still do it, but for the aesthetic, not because of Jesus. That would be kind of Stockholm syndrome. I also am in therapy, and my therapist had to give me a lecture about my internalized homophobia in our last session. And I was very uncomfortable through it because I'm very uncomfortable with feelings. I also need to cry more. Yes, it's a lot. Is everything you said is so relatable. The time spent in the prayer room.
Listen.
is wow. That's crazy.
Yes.
Yes. I was going to say something about the last thing that you said. Oh, you also said something about calling people dumb for not understanding. Yes, I used to do that. I really am trying to grow out of it. But yeah, everything you said is very accurate and very relatable.
I'm happy.
So thanks so much for and we should talk about we'll talk about the mental health aspect of it a little bit in a bit. So wait, that's the next question. So can you discuss the importance of mental health care for LGBT plus people, but especially young LGBT plus people?
Yeah. So the thing is, being young and queer, it's very hard to navigate spaces, especially being here in the Caribbean, because you're faced and bombarded with a lot of things telling you that it's wrong. In fact, you're faced with things that are telling you that you being queer is a mental illness, right? And so even in that, if you internalize that, you're gonna try to fix it and think that there's something, very wrong with you. But if you haven't heard it before, it is not a mental illness, right? But it's very important to take care of your mental health, because, having people think that, you can be, converted, or that who you are is wrong and not accepted, it is going to be very overwhelming. If you are in the home with your family who isn't accepting, that in itself is a whole nightmare, because one, you are under 18, so you have to stay in that home. And that home in itself is going to possibly be abusive in in many ways. And one, we're also in a pandemic, which now means that you don't have an escape to go to school, right? You can't stay back and do extracurricular or do the things that you'll usually do, without a pandemic. And so with all of those added stressors and restrictions is going to take a toll on you. And we all know what happens and what is possible to happen when your mental health is deplorable and when you do not have an outlet to be able to release, or if you can't afford therapy, and so many things can, make you now have to deal with this on your own. But it's very important to maintain your mental health in various ways. Sometimes if you can't afford therapy, there are, various exercises that you can do. And trust me, I know maybe someone might stoop right now with those exercises. I hate when my therapist gives me exercises. Like, I told her that I was really sad the other day, and she was like, okay, I'm gonna email you some exercises. And I was very annoyed because what, like, how are they gonna help? But I tried it and it did help, right? It helped with my anxiety and also depression. But there are resources available all over, like online, that you can access, and I will also send that resource that my therapist shared with me to is it Cider? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It's Seda.
Seda, got you.
Yes.
I will send those to Seda, so that they can share with you, so you can be able to access that. But if you don't take care of your mental health, the entire world and everything it has to say will crumble on you, especially if you're an active user on social media and you see all of the nonsense that happens. I usually have to take up, like, I really love Twitter, but Twitter is really a kind of an awful space sometimes, especially when the people who are homophobic just decide that they're gonna share their opinions out there. And I mute words. I take a break sometimes, to not say it, because even me, seeing a therapist and having access to resources, it becomes quite overwhelming. And with my depression, there, it comes with it, suicidal ideation and all of that. And so if I don't take care of my mental health, if I don't do breathing exercises, take breaks, have a trusted friend group, I will fall apart. And, if you intend on staying here for some time and wanting to be able to make a difference for yourself and for others, it's really important that you take care of your mental health, take breaks, curate your timelines online to how you like it. Nothing is wrong with blocking, muting, restricting accounts. I do that all the time. You need to curate a space that is safe for you if you are existing in those spaces, and also reach out to people. I mean, and this is why I also have queer in my bio, so people will know that I am a trusted safe space that you can access and speak to when there are ever any issues. And so that is very important. But even having a space like this, I wished, like, I was thinking about that, like, I couldn't believe it, because here's a group, of young people that are making a safe space for themselves, which is so, a lot of us wish we had this, years ago, but it's here. And this is a really great step. And I'm really hoping that what I shared, is enough to show and prove that you really need to take care of your mental health as a queer young person living in the Caribbean.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this stuff, and I will share it with everybody. I'll add it to the email list so that everybody can access.
Let me send it now.
Those. Okay. I just want to say, in case I didn't say it before, that feel free to unmute your mic or type in the chat if you're feeling shy today. yes. So if anybody would like to say anything, would like to ask anything in addition, or you can, if you're shy, you could private message me and I can ask for you, or you could wait until the end. If you don't want to feel like you're interrupting, you can wait until the end of my list of prepared questions to ask. But we will have to end at 7:15 today, so just make sure if you want to get your stuff in, you gotta make sure you're getting it in early. So just saying. Um, so whenever you're ready, you can tell me and I will ask the next question. We asked, what are some things your friends do to validate you as a queer person? Oh, that's a nice ally question. Love that.
I love that. My friends treat me as a regular person. And let me tell you how important that is, right? Sometimes there are friends who know you're queer and then they just send you a bunch of queer things all the time. Like, always want to send you some rainbow shit, rainbow stuff. To let you know, like, yeah, I am a true ally. That's very annoying. Just be regular. Like, you have your friends who are like straight and you just treat them normal, that really helps, because then you see me as a person with feelings and being regular. Another thing that they do is they also read a lot and familiarize themselves with the various issues that you can experience as a queer person. And that really makes me feel seen, because then it's not like if I have to educate them. That is the worst thing to do as an ally. And yes, it's great for people to want to be educated, but do not use your queer friend as the library. You can also access, Google and various things. Of course, there are questions that you'll want to ask your friend for more clarity, but also they always ask the questions with love and from a place of really wanting to know rather than thinking I'm a spectacle. And so my friends treat me as a regular person. They read a lot so that they can familiarize themselves with the issues that are occurring and engage me in those conversations, and they listen. And the other thing that they do is they hold space for me when I am questioning myself. And so I've found myself struggling a lot lately. And even like I talked to my partner about it, but like I really get annoyed when people just assume my pronouns, even though even though I will appear as a cis woman, and I do use she, her pronouns, but it annoys me very much. I've found myself hating when people call me like sister, or like, address me as like ladies. It really like, and it bugs me when I have to like take female on a form. And of course, I think, as we grow as people, there are a lot of things that we are coming to understand about ourselves. And my friends listen to that. They don't assume, they listen. They don't suggest anything, they listen. And listening is real important, because you're going to have friends that are struggling with their gender identities, with what the world is telling them that they should be. And all sometimes people want is just for a listening ear rather than to get advice. And that is one of the most important things you can do as a friend to validate a queer friend. Listening and not thinking that you need to give advice unless they ask, because sometimes people just want a listening ear. So I'd say those things. I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 things that I gave, but definitely those that they do.
Yeah, heavy relates. For my straight friends here, note, we taking notes here. I hope you're all taking notes. So somebody asked of any queer persons that you look up to that maybe inspire you to be more open.
Yes. Yes, I do. It's like I try not to look up to people because people can embarrass you. and break your heart with the things that they do. But I mean, I do see people in various spaces that I really like admire, and that makes me think and affirms me. So definitely, if Zoe was on, that'd have been great. But Zoe definitely inspires me to be unapologetically who I am. There's also a writer. Their name is Akweki, and they inspire me to just be like, it's just so admirable because they're so unapologetic and just very open about who they are, about their experiences, and it's just like really touching for me. um who else is there? Yeah, it's quite limited because I think there are like people who I used to look up to that are queer. They've done bad things, so it's always like, oh, I really used to look up to you, but here you are doing nonsense, and now I have to, remove my loyalty. Oh, and there is Shivani Ramlochan, who's a writer, who's my favorite writer. Like, I'm obsessed with Shivani. Shivani is just so open and lovely, and just someone who I like, who inspires me to approach things in a way of like, understanding and love. And so yeah, those three people.
Okay. I forgot to ask the second part of the mental health question, but do you know of any mental health care providers, be it individuals or organizations, that are queer friendly or queer affirming?
Right. So I do know the Silver Lining Foundation does. I think there is some psychosocial support in there. Um, I don't know who they work with, but I definitely know that organization helps. Also, my therapist is lovely. Um, Her name is Jana, and she runs the Central. You have the same therapist? Jana's amazing. You have the same therapist? I knew from the time you said email, I know this had to be Jana. Wow, look at that. No, but Jana is literally everybody's therapist in the queer community. I can put all of my, no, but I am 80% sure that probably that is. But Jana is amazing, y'all. Jana is everything. My partner and I see her. We also see her together, like, you know, um, going to the same session and also apart. Yeah, Jana is everything and so kind, and she listens, and she also gives you extra time when you're falling apart. um Jana always gives me extra time because I talk a lot, and I always have so many things that happen within a week, and so she's definitely pulled me out of some of the darkest times, and made me a great person. So definitely Jana, which I'm sure that
Okay, I think I'll skip a question for now because of the time. So, what advice do you have for queer teams?
yeah. So honestly, one of the major things is to be yourself, completely yourself, um, and show up and not be afraid of who you are. The mistake that I have made and that I am really hoping, I mean, everyone has their own journeys, but I took a while to really come into myself and accept who I was, and that made me make awful decisions, and made me do things that did not make me feel like myself, that hurt, that felt like it destroyed me. And that could have easily been avoided if I was more open and upfront and sure of who I was. And so the first thing is that accepting who you are, accepting your very queer self. The other thing is um, remembering that gender and sexuality all exist on a spectrum. So you might exist in a particular way or like a particular type of person, but that may not be the same thing years down the road, and that's okay. It is very okay, because like fluidity is fine and things change over time, and that's fine. It's nothing to be upset with yourself about. It's nothing to feel less of yourself or even less of being a part of the community. And there are people who are quite biphobic and transphobic within this community that they are very exclusive, and that is not about you. You are not causing them to be that way, and that is something to always remember, that many times when people are homophobic or transphobic or just exclusive, it's never about you, it's about them and their own issues within themselves. And so to remove yourself from that equation with believing that you can possibly change who you are to make them feel comfortable. The third thing is never change who you are to get into any space. Of course, there are sometimes, for the sake of work or whatever, that, you're in a workplace, you don't, because first of all, you never have to disclose. No one has to know anything. It's up to you, right? But if you do choose to disclose and someone is asking you to switch up who you are, that is cutting away pieces of yourself. And if we are to really build a just and inclusive world, you can't cut away pieces of yourself. Of course, it's not wrong if you choose to do that, but let it be your choice and not someone ordering you to, or else, right? Because as a human being, you do have the power of choice. You should be able to choose. There are instances where you'll be backed into a corner and you have to choose. And even if you do choose to hide a part of yourself or not disclose for the sake of your wellness and survival, that is also okay. The world we live in is a world that is mean and awful, and we need to do different things to survive. But always make sure that you've consulted with yourself and thought about it, and make sure that you are comfortable with the situation. And lastly, have chosen family and friends. And also understand that those spaces are also dynamic, so they're not going to remain the same for years. You might change it up. But it's really important to build community and to create safe spaces if it doesn't already exist for you. So yeah.
Okay, so we have like 5 more minutes. So I'm gonna open up the floor if anybody wants to ask anything, but I will also ask this last question. Oh, I just wanted to know if there's anything that you wanted to share that maybe I might not have asked about, or if there is anything you want to know from me or us, all of us who are here. So yeah, that's a double.
So I'm actually grateful that I was invited. It was very affirming. Made me feel like I was probably doing something right, and it also affirmed why I'm open and that it's not a bad thing. And so I'm really happy about that. It did like a lot for me as a person, in my quiet times to reflect on. It also made my experience yesterday, you know, not matter, because the spaces that I need to be in, it will be there. But you asked me really great questions, so I don't think there's anything that I'm thinking right now that I need to add. But what I'm interested in is, like what's next for queer teens? Where are you all headed? And what support that you think you may need?
Okay. Okay, well, I think I need to answer the what's next. Well, short term, next week, Sunday, we're doing queer literature, specifically queer literature in the Caribbean, specifically poetry. So we're gonna explore that. I'll talk to them more about that after you leave because they didn't know about that yet. And in the long term, really, this is just for us to vibe as queer people and just have conversations and talk about being gay and talk about being queer because sometimes that's important. And yeah, that's no activism, no activism here. That's the thing. I like to say that my existence is activism enough. So that's kind of, yeah, that's what we're doing here.
I love
Anybody
that.
want to talk? I don't like y'all. Y'all always make me do all the talking. Danny, Joey, anybody wants to talk? Does anybody want to talk from an ally's perspective? I know I have some allies here.
Oh,
Ask
that's
some
nice.
questions now. Don't embarrass me or somebody ask something.
Ah.
I'm gonna mute my mic and I expect somebody to ask because Ms. Ashlee needs to leave very soon. So
Yeah,
ask
I could stay
quickly.
until 7:20 if there are multiple questions.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
y'all cough up those questions, people.
Your throat is hurting, you probably need to go get a little test. A swab.
Yes, we know Terrence is queerphobic, okay? We know Terrence is queerphobic. Okay.
Who's Terrence?
The Minister of Health. We were talking last week about his previously made homophobic statements. So that is in reference to that.
That's funny.
Um, since it's so funny, say something now. Y'all embarrassing me. I don't like that. That's why I don't bring people here. That's why y'all can't be taken out in public.
Hi.
Hey.
No. So I wanted to ask how, well, if you haven't, but how would you suggest in terms of navigating choosing, okay, I'm starting over. In terms of choosing the people that you surround yourself when you maybe come to the realization that they don't support your identity, and if you've had to deal with that, and any suggestions.
Is your question if you have people who don't accept you, how you deal with it, or how do you
When you
make
when you you're in a space and you come to find that there are people who maybe you originally associated with, or you just in the space with people, how you would navigate them not when you find out that they wouldn't support your identity?
I leave because one, of course, you can assess the space to see if there is something that, and that's always so violent, right? If you can transform the space through educating them. But I feel like if they wanted to be educated, they will make it known, and they wouldn't have excluded you. They would have said, we kind of probably feel uncomfortable and we don't understand, but hey, can we probably have sessions and talk about it? Or can you guide us to resources so that we can understand? But if they outright just say, yeah, we don't feel comfortable with you, can you, I don't know, do something? Then that space you leave that space. It's always important to go where you're welcome, because the danger of staying in spaces that don't accept you can result in various forms of violence. We know that homophobia is it can lead into gender-based violence and you being, hurt because of who you are. And so to avoid all of those things, you leave, don't look back. And it also helps to protect your mental health.
I sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
I have a
Go ahead.
question.
Yeah.
Well, this is from a closeted perspective. So with in terms of parents, how would you go about like cutting them off?
The
Well,
parents.
like when they don't accept and like they really toxic. So how would you go about like cutting them out of your life? It's a hard move, but how would you go about doing that?
Yeah. So there's no clear-cut way of cutting off your parents, because it's always hard, because it's your parents. So that's going to be a very difficult relationship to navigate, because it's your parents, right? But what's important is to do what is best for you. And so in some cases, it might look like reducing contact. It might look like staying away from family gatherings. Or it might look like, I have a friend who actually she and her mom has a really great relationship, but they just don't talk about it. She talks about it in various spaces, but just not with her mom. For me, my mom is accepting to my partner. She just keeps calling her my friend, and I guess they make whatever peace in their mind to be fine. My father, however, I don't speak to him because he's awful. And so in a case like that, it was very easy for me to cut my father off because we've never had a relationship per se. But there's no manual that really guides you as to how to cut your parents off. What is important is that you find ways to what makes you feel safe and welcomed and seen. And if that might look like reducing contact or whatever, but of course it is assessing your own situation. So for everyone, it's not going to be simple because you depend on your parents and they might live in their houses. But yeah, it is a hard thing, and there's no cut and dry way to say how to go about it, but always center yourself, your sanity, your mental health in that, and do what makes you feel okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And I really hope things do work out as you navigate this.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. There's one question that will have to be the last question because Ms. Ashlee has to leave y'all. But the question in the chat is, inclusivity is hard sometimes, even for queer persons. How do I be inclusive even though I speak before I think? And I think that is about inclusive language, as in when it comes to gender pronouns and such.
Yes. You just keep trying. So y'all, short story, in 2017 was actually the first time I knew that what I was presented with, that people actually were able to choose their pronouns, right? So I traveled to San Francisco. That was the first time I also saw a gender neutral bathroom, and it was for a festival. So we had a circle up, and they would ask us to introduce ourselves and was asking like, what are our pronouns? And my brain did all kind of flips because I did not know. First of all, my brain forgot what a pronoun was. So I struggled. I listened to everyone's response and I realized, oh, this is what they were asking. And, after that, there were people that I encountered like years after who, like my brain, because of course we are socialized to believe that according to how you express yourself, it meant that this was your identity. And so I would see someone with, say, a feminine gender expression, my brain will automatically think, okay, she, her pronouns. And there was a time I was in a room with someone, there was a couple of us, I misgendered someone, right? And my brain flips through, and also audibly, I said it, flipped through each pronoun, and because I was panicked and I just didn't get it right. And then what the person's friend was like, it's they. And I felt so ashamed, y'all, because I'm like, God, I just wanted to fall in a hole, right? But I felt a little shame for the 2 seconds, but then I just repeated it in my mind. And honestly, there are a lot of things that change over time, but you have to remind yourself that you are learning and that it's okay to mess up, apologize, and move on. Do not dwell on it. Just continue to do better and be better, because you are going to make mistakes. We're human, but it's what you do when you make the mistake. You apologize and you move on, and you just try your best to improve on the next time.
So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for all of your responses. I know that you have to leave. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for sharing your valuable time. Yeah, y'all, let us have any chat. Thank the person who's here. Don't embarrass me. So I know you have to leave, so anytime you need to go is okay. I'm just gonna continue with my presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and this was great. Let me know what else you may ever need moving forward.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. I will keep that in mind.
Yes. Be safe, y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, people, that was today's speaker. So let us move on into the rest of today's proceedings. I did something wrong. I'm bad at technology. Okay, let's go. Okay. Boom. And I skipped something. Okay, let's ignore the queer history in that. So yes, next week we will be having an interactive session examining queer literature, especially by writers in the Caribbean. So what we're gonna do is y'all and I and everybody, we're gonna find some queer literature that we like, and we are going to come maybe share it in the chat. Or if you would like, if you feel comfortable enough, you can read it to us. And we will be discussing it. Also, we will have a poet coming to join us, and they will be performing a spoken word piece, and they are a queer poet from Trinidad, actually. So yes, that is what is in store for next week. Also, Miss Zoe would like to make Miss Zoe would like to make up for, well, she'd like to have a makeup session because she missed today. So yes, if you are a writer, you can definitely read your stuff. That will be encouraged, 100%. Miss Zoe would like to have a makeup session, free promo. Yes, here's the place to plug yourself. Really, y'all could go follow Miss Ashlee as well. um, she is at Ashlee Burnett or something like that on Twitter and Instagram and all these socials. So, and she has a website as well. I'll put it in an email. When I send you all the mental health resources, I will put Ms. Ashlee's info. So I think that maybe we might have to have a repeat session of queer mentors discussion. So I think if you all are willing, the week after we can do this same thing, same questions as well, except with Ms. Zoe. So y'all can tell me in the chat how y'all think that sounds. And what's the next thing? As usual, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, tell your friends. Feel free to DM us or email us if you have anything, any questions, queries, comments, concerns, etc., etc. And now is the time for y'all to share with me how y'all thought today's session was. So I'm gonna mute my mic and talk, people.
Yeah.
You think it was a very informative session? Nice. Love to hear that. Anything else? Anybody?
Hello. Yeah, like whoever that person was, that talked before, that said it was informative. I also found that it was informative. It's also kind of sad, particularly the question about distancing yourself from your parents. That was yeah, it got really personal there. So, but yeah, it was good.
Thank you for sharing. Hi. Yes.
I thought that the session was, I came late, but it was very wonderful, informative, and answered all the questions I had about, just navigating how to better navigate any challenges I faced and stuff like that.
So that is the end of our planned event for today. So thank you everybody for coming, and I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for sharing. So yes,